Okay guys, welcome back. This is the first official video. Okay guys, welcome back. This is the first official video for the channel and I had to kick it off with something that I am super passionate about and so excited about, and doing the research for this has made me so emotional. So I'm going to share it with you. What I'm going to be talking about is the history of the film, some of the drama that it came through, why I think it's significant, why I think it's easy to watch, why I think you will be invested as someone who doesn't necessarily watch films from like a professional point of view. So you don't have to be a filmmaker to appreciate the reviews of this video or the input of this video. This is actually for general South Africans that don't know where to start, or that kind of umming and ahhing when they see the poster on Showmax or at your local cinema. So this is me trying to convince you guys to go and watch cinema. Okay, cool. Now that you've understood that, let's begin. So we're kicking it off with a bang. The first film that you have to watch as a South African would be Iniqaba. I might be butchering that, but in English it translates to The Wound. Where do I even start with this film, bro? There is so much drama and tea and shit that went on with this film. So to begin, if you haven't heard of this film, the synopsis is basically about a guy that goes to the traditional Xhosa camps in the Eastern Cape, where it's the initiation and you go into the mountains and do the thing. And he is actually secretly gay, and he has a love affair with one of the other sort of camp counselors at the thing in the mountains. And the film kind of divulges from there. I'm not going to spoil any of these films for you. Like I said, I'm not going to go into that deep a thing, but that's what the synopsis is basically about. Moonlight would probably be the closest film to something you may have watched already and could reference it from, except Iniqaba is a lot more accessible in terms of it's shot here, it's local crew, local actors, like our spaces, our stories. So that would be the synopsis of this film. Okay, so let's begin here. This film had a lot of controversy going on with it. So initially, when the film just premiered, the sort of traditional leaders were saying, how can you reveal secrets about the initiation, and there's things that aren't supposed to be shared on screen, things that women aren't supposed to know, things that people outside of the culture aren't supposed to know. And the fact that there was a white guy directing it sort of exacerbated all of this. But as the sort of controversy went along, it turns out that there was sort of an underlying homophobia, actually. So our main character, who's played by Nkane, who's the lead actor in this film, does an exceptionally beautiful job. Like genuinely, if I look at something like Moonlight and the actors in that, Nkane does this film so much justice. And in real life, he is a queer man and identifies as a queer man. The film really is more about sort of the queer space in the setting of this initiation camp. So as much as people were saying, hey, you know, you can't tell us these, you can't put these secrets on screen, and that's where the controversy was coming from, someone actually came out and said, well, the documentary for Nelson Mandela's Long Walk to Freedom had a lot more revealed about these initiation camps. So much so, actually, it escalated to the point where there were violent protests at Stokiniko's and New Metros, where people from the communities were coming out and saying that they were going to burn the place down, that they were going to torch the cinemas, they were going to burn the actors down and put tires over his neck. It got to a point where the main actor actually cancelled a couple of shoots in the Eastern Cape because he got death threats on like Twitter. He literally got mail sent to him saying that he better not step foot in Cape Town, he better not step foot in the EC, because he would be murdered for basically backing a film of this sort, backing something like how dare this gayness be going on. And he's spoken about it at length in interviews with The Sun and the Mail and Guardian and things, where he basically says that this isn't a racial issue, this is a queer issue. And you know, he's been teased since he was 4 years old about this queerness thing, and you know, this isn't new to him, but now it's sort of stifling his creative voice, and it's not so much actually about a traditional racist aspect, it's actually a homophobic aspect, and with that he had a problem with. But anyway, more than that, the crew actually got sent death threats. They eventually had to be held up in a safe house with security because Kate Panzergro, incredible, love her, got such a freaking work aspiration crush on this lady. Kate is incredible. She's produced some fantastic films in the South African landscape. They got sent death threats in the mail to their houses and then had to be whisked off to a safe house and got put there for safety. So that's kind of crazy. So that's actually where the controversy of this film started. It started with why white man, then it started with why gay man, and then the controversy got so bad, or like the outcry from the community got so bad, that the Film and Publication Board got involved. So the film was rated 16 for language and nudity. There are nude scenes in the film, so if that's something that bothers you, then grow the fuck up. No, I'm kidding. If that's something that bothers you, then just do know that before you go in. But anywho, so the film was rated 16, went to screen at cinemas, did incredibly well, won a bunch of awards at the Durban Film Festival, in Thailand, in Canada, in Toronto Film Festival, which is Canada. So it won a bunch of awards across the world. And then back in its hometown, people were so outraged by sort of accusations, which weren't really accusations. It was kind of just someone sparked the idea that this person said that, and a lot of people, without actually watching the film, just rampaged against it. So basically, the Film and Publication Board, out of like fear, classified the film as an 18 only film. So in South Africa, the laws are that you cannot screen an over 18 film or 18 only rated film in cinemas, public cinemas, because it was classified as pornography. Thus, the film was just pulled from cinemas, which means no one could watch it. So obviously the producers of the film fought back against this, and they actually took the Film and Publication Board to court and had the rating overturned, which means it got put back to 16. But that's badass as hell, dude. So this film got crazy backlash. You're getting put up in a safe house. Then like people went kind of the legal route, got your film pulled, and then you got your film put back in, which means it started screening in cinemas again and people could go and watch it again. To put the cherry on the cake, it actually then got shortlisted for an Oscar for foreign film. So that's amazing. I actually tuned in the night when they were announcing the nominated films, and I remember going on Instagram Live and watching Kate and watching Kane and watching the rest of the crew and the director and everyone kind of sitting there all fancy dressed, and we were waiting and it got announced and they weren't officially nominated, but they were shortlisted. So that alone is something that you can brag about at the next Bri. If someone goes, well, I don't watch South African films, you can go, well, actually in 2018 we got shortlisted at the Oscars, so you should be watching South African films. You can find it on Showmax still to this day. Otherwise, just check out their website. And Kane also makes music, which is dope. I will definitely be putting that on a playlist. And yeah, that would be our #1 film to check out to prove that we don't just make Leon Schuster movies anymore. Is Slava, the Wound. Okay. Film #2 is super near and dear to my heart. It makes me so emotional and in my feels. Not because it's necessarily like an emotional film. I think it is. It's an Afrikaans film called Johnny Is Nie Dood Nie. Oh, dude, this film. There's something about this film that gets like the essence of that time period right. So to understand this film, you have to understand Johannes Kerkorrel, which is what the film is about. It's sort of like a artsy take on the biographical. It's not biographical in the sense that it's factual, but it's like inflated for story. But it's an artsy biographical film about Johannes Kerkorrel and his friends, sort of, and like their like road trippy experience. And it plays off with this bunch of friends that's reflecting on their university days. And Johannes Kerkorrel, who, if you don't know who that is, he was pivotal to the Voelvrye Beweging, which translates to, direct translation would be bird-free movement. But it refers to, excuse me, but it refers to a movement in the 1980s, late 80s, mid 80s, maybe early 70s as well in South Africa, when a bunch of musicians got together and put up these like protest shows across South Africa to protest apartheid, actually. So these are white rock and roll musicians, and these men walked so that bands like Fok of Polisikar and Karen Zoid could run, which we love all of them. But anywho, so yeah, this film just captures like that zeitgeisty feeling of like what I imagine my parents to have been like, you know, smoking spliffs in the streets of Hillbrow, listening to like Rodriguez and Koos Kombuis and all of these guys. And how there's a beautiful article that someone actually wrote in the Sunday Times where they say that Koos Kombuis and the furore movement and Johannes Kerkorrel was a tiny stone that helped the avalanche of the freedom movement in South Africa happen, or at least the apartheid government to crumble, maybe a better way to put it. Johannes Kerkorrel actually performed at Nelson Mandela's inauguration in 1994. It's just this beautiful, well-rounded story. This dude is such a legend. He studied journalism and got married and went to Cape Town and was like all cutesy about it until he also started getting involved in his university and politics, and then started making music because he found these guys. And it's just so like, it's what I would equate the 70s Woodstock hippie movement to be, but the South African equivalent of that. And earlier I spoke about Rodriguez, who, if you don't know who that is, Rodriguez made incredible music, not a South African, but he became really famous in South Africa and no one else in the world, but his record label hid that from him. And there's another great documentary called Searching for Sugar Man, not a South African made documentary, but fantastic, not featured on this. Anyway, getting back to it. So Johannes Kerkorrel and Koos Kombuis and a lot of these guys' music from the furore beweging was actually censored, thank you, by the government and schools and universities because they didn't want it to interfere with the Afrikaans Christian moral, you know, outlook or propaganda, low-key, if you will. So the film is based around this dude and his friend group and how they tour. It's not so much about the music and the furore beweging, it's actually like, it's just the coolest juxtaposition between them today as like adults in the 2010s, married with kids, and you know, they're talking about like the burglar bars around the fence and how the petrol price has gone up or whatever, and it juxtaposes, it's like an A story and a B story that kind of overlaps, where they're these people now and they're grown-ups and they're like formal and whatever, and they used to be these just like anti-apartheid rebels in their community, going in their hippie van, you know, doing the thing. And it's just beautiful. And it's the story itself is quite sad. As I said, there are biographical elements to the story. It kind of plays around with the concept that Johannes was possibly a gay man, although this is never really confirmed or denied. It's just, man, you have to watch this film. You have to watch this film. There's a beautiful scene in it where they're all these young teenagers and they're like in the swimming pool, and they kind of all moved into this weird student frat house together, and they're in the pool and they're washing dishes and smoking spliffs in the pool. And it's just, oh man, it just encapsulates this like youth anarchy zeitgeist that it's never been put into words better. The main actors are Rudolph Storm and Rolanda Marais. Oh, those two in this film. I could watch this film 100 times over again. It makes me just want to like go out there with my fucking all-stars on, and like reminds me of why things like Fuck Off Polisekar was so huge, and why Karen Zoid and Afrikaans is Plesierig was so huge, because it's the alternative side of like Afrikaans culture, you know, like, yeah, you know, if you're not in that culture, then you might see the Afrikaans culture as like really stuffy and really like formal, or Christian values, or like homophobic or racist, or what's the girl one? Misogynistic. Oh my god, thank you. So you might associate it with that and apartheid, but there's this other really cool rock and roll side to Afrikaans where people were really fighting against it, and they did it through music and art and photography and documentaries. And the furore beweging is kind of like where it all started. I mean, these people went under aliases to make music so that their universities and their schools and whatever couldn't trace it back to them and kick them out. But eventually they just got so mega famous that they are in the history books now for writing songs and putting up absurd shows with symbols like Proteas in jewels and scared Springboks, and like they didn't have racial conduct codes at their concerts, which I think is relevant then because there was segregation, and at these shows you could be black, gay, queer, white, a woman, a man, dress how you wanted, and like it's just such a beautiful part of our history that I don't think it's spoken about enough. So the film isn't about that, but it just it touches on being there so well without being loud about it, without trying to make it a rock star thing. It's just this beautiful soft story of these 4 white South Africans that are like trying to find this way in this landscape, and how pessimistic they actually became, but how like you just can't forget, man. You just can't forget about rock and roll. So Johnny Isney, do it, then go and watch it. Fabulous. Okay, the next film for me is definitely Five Fingers of Marseille. Marseille. Sorry, it's French. Look it up. My bad. I am butchering pronunciations in this video. Forgive me, please. So Five Fingers for Marseille is another South African film, obviously, and that's what the list is about. But what stood out for me about this film before I watched it were the technical aspects. So I have to put a spotlight on the cinematography first and foremost. I think because my background is coming from behind camera stuff, this film for me still to this day is cinematography goals. Literally, it's cinematic, gorgeous, widescreen, fantastic. Then second to that, I would probably say the editing. Don't get much better than that. It's almost like it has no place. It has no business being that good as a South African film, seriously. And then third, again, would be the color grading. Again, I studied color grading. I do this professionally for clients, so it's really something that stands out for me when it's lacking. But when it's good, that's actually the first thing about this film that caught my eye. I saw a trailer for it, I want to say it is Silver Scatum Fears, maybe online. And what stood out for me is the color grading. I was like, what is this film? I need to know what's happening. Please tell me more about it, because the color grading is phenomenal. It doesn't feel like a South African film at all. It's not really marketed as one either, to be honest. I mean, there's comments of Variety, which is a American magazines. It shows up in a lot of international festivals, and I haven't heard a lot of South Africans talking about this film as much as they should. All right, so Five Fingers of Marseille is about this group of childhood friends, the Five Fingers, in this remote town of Marseille. I'm so sorry if I'm butchering that, but just let's get over that. Okay, so it's a friendship group or a friend circle of 5 kids. They sort of grow up together in this rural community, and then one of them commits this atrocity, runs away, and then years later comes back to try and sort of make peace. And then when he comes back, it turns out that this town has fallen into disarray and there's like a new sheriff in town. Very stylized in like a cowboy western themed. The main actor, his character is so sexy, so like, who the hell even is Django? Do you know what I'm saying? But just better. And the fact that it's homegrown, fantastic. There are phenomenal actors in this film. Including the main actor Vuyo and Jerry Mafeking, who comes in later. Just stellar performances. A little bit slower, very masculine energy in this film, but it's just a fun ride. And again, like, if you're standing around the bar and someone goes, I don't watch South African films, the quality is so terrible. Homie, we don't just make content for SABC2 anymore, or Mnet for that matter. Who watches DSTV? It's statistically more expensive. Get up in Showmax subscription and watch these films. Five Fingers is a little bit more sort of fantastical, narrative kind of film, but you would not be wasting a Friday or a Saturday evening chilling and watching this film. You feel like such a badass, and every time we drive through these like rocky mountainous landscapes, this film comes to mind. I did not know I was so into cowboys as I did when this film came out. So watch the trailer, it's so good. Okay, so in the 4th place, which actually is like a descending order, so out of 4 out of 5, which is high. Ooh, I hope this is making sense. But my 4th film on this list actually might have to be split between 2 films, to be honest with you. It's very difficult to decide because these are two powerhouse films in the South African sphere. The one is Poppy Ngwena and the other one would be Nume Skoli. Dude, if you've watched either of these films, you know that they are absolute tear jerkers. The real life history behind these films, the message that both of them have is just incomparable to anything else I've seen on our screens. You have to watch these. These are pivotal to your film education as a South African. It's also just a very emotional story and very much a think piece as well. I can't split between these two, so we're gonna do both of them. Let's start with Poppy. I think I watched this at the Silver Scanner when I was a QC in 2019. I think it premiered in 2020 on KykNet. Weirdly enough, it's a story about a Xhosa woman that speaks Afrikaans, and she is the helper, the domestic worker in an Afrikaans household. The reason Poppy stands out for me so much, and it's such a think piece for me, is it really delves into this concept that's being spoken about a lot at the moment, where domestic workers feature in white households as employees, but back home in their own household, they are mothers, grandmothers, aunts, and sisters who aren't present for their families' lives, you know. So while this white kid is being helped by their domestic worker who gets them ready for school and helps them make lunches and helps them with their homework and gets them bathed, they have a child at home who isn't being bathed or helped with homework or getting made lunch. So yeah, it's an intense piece. The film plays off in 1980s South Africa. If I got that incorrect, I'll just put it down here. And it revolves around Poppy, who is a domestic worker in this space, and sort of this white lady who is her employer, who is sort of fighting for her rights. It's a complex story, and I don't want to give away too much, but what you do need to understand about this is it's interesting as it's a woman's story from two very different perspectives, but both of those perspectives are fighting for the same thing, if that makes sense. So where they're coming from in the context and how they're getting to there is completely different, but it's women fighting for women in apartheid era, a black woman and a white woman trying to kind of get to this thing. The ending is heartbreaking, without giving too much away. Watch this film, but have a cuddle buddy or have a pillow or have a big glass of wine, because this is a tough one, but it's important to watch, and it's going to be a really cool piece to discuss with your friends and family at your next braai. So don't say I didn't tell you. The next film that is sharing the number 4 spot has to be Nume Skoli. I have been obsessed with this film since film school. It came out in 2016, and one of the producers, David Max Brown, actually became the head of our film school in my final year, so it was incredible to get to know this man and ask him some questions about the film. But regardless about this, Nume Skoli plays off in the 1960s, and it's based in the Cape Flats, and about this young teenage boy that forms a gang to kind of get by on how life goes. He ends up in prison, and if you know anything about the numbers gang or gang initiation in the Cape Flats, rape is a big part of the culture there. And for him to kind of get out of the situation and get out of the beatings and get out of like sexual assault, he becomes a storyteller actually, and he adds value to himself by being a storyteller in the prisons. So yeah, the story kind of just revolves around that, and it's a true story. So these scenes are just so mesmerizing and so capturing. He literally sits in prisons and he just tells stories and retells them, and he becomes such a valued member of the prison society that it almost becomes difficult for him to kind of get out of that. And again, it just, the whole process of that and the whole film, and it's beautiful and it's so sad in the 1960s, and it's so stylized, and the Cape Flats again is like, it's a culture that I think gets memeified a lot and gets put into sort of these stereotypes and these tropes, and Nume Skoli just has this beautiful, subtle way of tapping into a lot of the culture that comes from that, and how it was actually oppressed, and how that's not spoken about enough. In the real world as well, this film did one of the coolest things ever. They actually had a screening where they had a live orchestra perform the score for the film. So the music of the film was performed by a live orchestra, while the actual guy who wrote the book, who the film became a film about, was in attendance.
Scotty van die Salon.
Listen to my stories before you to my phone.
Hi, I'm Rashid Lombard, Scotty van die Salon. Please support John Fredericks. His book launch at Artscape on the 17th of September.
Kostes verbonden is R150. Kaartjies kan bekom word deur Poppyticket
Included incredible performance by Carl Shepard's score. Hope to see you there.
Listen to my stories before you to my phone.
Yeah, incredible film. Has a lot to also, like, once you start looking into the history of that film and the history of that culture, you start looking into Cape Town and the history of like the Fugard theatre quite a bit, and you know, theatre within the Cape Coloured community.
Hi, my name is Irshad Ali.
Denise Newman.
Edwin Joel.
Gino Lee Hector.
Dalen Oliver.
I'm Leanne van Roy.
Darren Joshua.
I'm Crystal Donnerovit.
My name is Jill Liebenberg.
Brendan Daniels. Abdurrahman Adams.
Amy Jefter. Hi, I'm Zoe Brown. I'm Ziano Latre.
Hi, I'm Levantine.
My name is Leka Lolas.
Hi, I'm Lloyd Jansen.
I'm Sherlyn Byrons and I'm from Cape Town.
How do you understand your identity as a coloured person?
I think I'm coloured.
But it's more of a culture than just the colour of your skin.
Yeah, the term coloured for me feels like a new
Coloured and proud seems a little bit like, you know, they serve to further divide us, I think.
That whole journey and Google hole that you get into with this film is awesome. But besides any of that, there's a lot of blood, gore, and cool Cape accents to look forward to. So go and check it out. Okay, my number one must-watch South African film. Dude, I get too excited when I talk about this film. I think my fiance at this point is just like, please stop. All my friends, anyone that wants to talk to me about film, this is what I word vomit about. I cannot recommend this film enough. It is by the incredible badass, Jenna Bass. She's a South African director. She is everything I want to be as a filmmaker one day, if not more. If I could make one film like this woman has and have the career that she has, life goals achieved, take me now, I'm happy, we can go. Jenna Bass's Flatland, perfection. Perfection. Cannot get any better. Imagine Thelma and Louise.
This is 9-8. You want to step back and get in your car again, please?
Officer, I am so sorry about this. Would you let go of that? Now, I really apologize, but would you put your hands on the steering wheel?
In like, imagine I've got like a big porky pot and you throw in Thelma and Louise and a little bit of like Yolandi Visser and a little bit of like Cape Flats murder and a little bit of like weird dodgy bars on like dirt roads in the South African buttfuck nowhere. This is what this film is about. Flatland. The main actress is Nicole Fontaine. Nicole Fontaine. She's the main actress in this film. She is ridiculous. How is this not the most famous woman on earth? I don't know, based off of this performance. She's giving very American Honey, which is another incredible indie film by Andrea Arnold. American film, not South African, but too good. I think Shay is in it. Shia LaBeouf is one of the other actors. Regardless, let's get back to Nicole. Fantastic performance. So gritty, so real, so dangerous. Just anything you could want from a lead actress. She is supported by Zal Besaidenote and Faith Beloy. Ridiculous. To encapsulate this film, it's about 3 women actually, but 2 that come from like a rural neighborhood, weird dystopian vibe of this film. Long story short, there's a murder that happens. The one's pregnant. They run away on a horse. They're gone. Everyone's looking for them. There's a third, Faith Beloy. She plays a detective who tries to find them, and they're kind of like running from like dodgy bar to dodgy bar and like truck stop and all sorts of crazy things that happen in between. It's 3 very different women. I think the thing that stood out for me about this movie after I watched it, besides the fact that it was like standing ovation, can't even deal with how good it was how only a female director, writer can portray women the way that these women have been portrayed. It's so complex and layered. It's not just the badass trope of like, girl is badass and wearing leather and sexy and smoking a cigarette. This is like 3 completely wholly formed characters that are women, each with their own type of romance and complications, each with their own like personality traits and hang-ups. And again, what actually stood out for me, the point that I'm trying to get to, is the friendship between the two main characters, the lead and the support actress. That friendship is such a subtle way in which women are friends that you can't really put into words, that Flatland encapsulates. It's like the weird toxic frenemy but together till we die, Thelma and Louise-ishness that hasn't been put on screen before, not that I've seen anyway. And the fact that it's a South African film, even better. I have to elaborate on what a badass Jenna Bass is. Again, I fangirl for this woman so hard. I was at a Silver Scatum screening in 2019. That's when this film came out, I think. Yes, I will double check that. And we were in Cape Town, Silver Scatum screening at the hotel on the Camps Bay Strip. And Flatland was about a premiere, and someone comes up on stage and they go, well, Jenna Bass has decided she's not participating in the Silver Scatum this year. She's not setting foot in the festival. She's at the bar of the hotel next door, if you have any questions for her. So instantly I was like, in love, stan, love you, need to meet this woman. And then I watched the film and I was like, please, like, biggest mommy energy, simp forever.
Mommy?
Mommy?
Sorry, mommy?
Play contexto, please.
I don't know anything.
So Flatland would be my #1 must-watch South African film. Man, woman, you will enjoy it. It's very funny. It's sort of like a dark humor, murder, detective, mystery, Zeph vibe, and cannot fault a single thing about it. I literally think I'm gonna go watch it right now. Please go and watch Flatland. Okay, that's it for my rant of films. I know there's a lot of information, and I know this is a very sort of holistic view and take on the films and very like abstract opinion about all of them. The point is, go and watch the movies. Get yourself a Showmax subscription, go and watch the movies, and the next time at a braai that someone's like, oh, I don't watch South African films, just tell them we don't do Leon Schuster films anymore, okay? Although we're not ready to talk about why Leon Schuster is controversial, but I think I saw a tweet the other day that was like, why did everyone fall for Leon Schuster if he literally looked like his face was made out of paper mache? And I was like, same, bruv. Anyway, I'm not hating on those films. I'm just trying to say, anyone that thinks that we don't have a film industry here is so wrong. These are just my top 5. I genuinely have 3 more hours of word vomit that I could spew all over you of things you need to go and watch. But if you watch these 5, I promise you, you will be having 4 a.m. whiskey conversations with your South African friends from all backgrounds a bunch of times, okay? And again, everyone's interpretation of these films is so different, and what they get from it is so cool. And the real life controversy around a lot of these films just makes it that much more like sizzly and hot, and that's just from the last 3 years. So please, if you do watch any of these films, let me know. I'm excited, dude. I'm excited to see what comes out. I'm excited to share these things with you and for you guys to discover this. I wish it was the first time I was watching some of these films again. Honestly, I think I'm just gonna binge all of them. My friends are gonna hate me for making them watch all of this stuff again, but we're gonna do it. It's incredible, and thank you for watching. I think we're going to do a lot more film stuff here, but next up will probably be some Gen Z type reviews. And yeah, thank you for coming. I'm so sorry I noted out on you, but you did stay for it though. Okay, bye.